Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Hi, and welcome again to our Art Guru podcast. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned in for our last episode, and I'm so happy to be here with Carmel. Tonight, we will be here talking more about art and education and our thoughts about what is it that about art that connects us with who we are as artists, as human beings, as teachers, and tonight we will be talking about our favorite quotes about art and education, and just sharing a bit about ourselves as well, I guess, while we ruminate. Ay, ang lalim, no? Habang iniisip natin kung ano nga ba ang
Chika.
chika lang tayo tonight about what is important to us and what resonates with us as educators. So do expect some quotable quotes from us today, and I guess we can start off, no, Carmel, with our first quote. And this one is actually from one of our art gurus in the community. This is from Alan Lorena Lanzana, and he says, teaching art needs a big heart. A teacher's passion is the learner's inspiration. So that's actually a wonderful thing to begin with. It's a wonderful opener to this topic about our thoughts about art and how it affects others. So I guess we can start with that. Let me just repeat that. Teaching art needs a big heart. The teacher's passion is the learner's inspiration.
I love it. I had to reread it a couple of times as well. I was like, wait, I feel like the second sentence, like a teacher's passion is the learner's inspiration. And then I thought, in the classroom, when we get excited, it's contagious, right? The energy is contagious. And then our students get excited. And then they see the potential in themselves and their ideas and the material and all these wonderful things that art subject in class offers our students. So yeah, I love the sentence. A teacher's passion is the learner's inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely, no? Kasi how can we inspire our students to do something kung hindi ka excited mismo dun sa ituturo mo, 'di ba? And that's really I think, no, not just applicable for art, for any subject, no, kahit ano kahit at kapamang na ano
Yeah,
student.
definitely.
Yeah, so no matter what kind of subject teacher you are, this really resonates for all. And Alan really points out something super important also, that when we teach art, a large part of us, no, from my personal experience, is handed over to your students also. That's why you need a big heart. Yung dapat willing ka to be open and sometimes even vulnerable with your students when you create artworks with them. Kasi oftentimes, di ba, we ask them, what is important to you? What do you want to make art about? And often, these are things that are important to the students. Sometimes they talk about their family or their favorite vacation. Or sometimes they even create art, di ba, about yung mga worries nila sa buhay, yung mga problems nila. And you really need to have an open and big heart in order to just be able to be supportive to our students. That also implies, no, yung role natin as teachers doesn't end with just teaching subject matter and technique and materials. It really moves from that to something more.
Yeah, totally. I was just to go on with that. I was talking with another teacher and she said this past year and then the 2 years online, she's like, we've as teachers, we really had to concentrate on the SEL, the social emotional learning. And we really had to like take a pause sometimes from the content or the topics or like the standards that were in focus, and we had to take a pause and say, okay, how do lots of temperature checks, do lots of breaking down and scaffolding how to process feelings, process emotions. And again, it's every subject, but more so in art because we are so much more our subject matter is about the soul. You're right. So it's we that comes out a lot more in the arts. So Yeah, love this quote. Great job, Sir Alan.
Yeah, thanks so much to Sir Alan for sharing that quote with us. And which how about you, Carmel? What's your favorite quote to share with us
Oh.
tonight?
So, okay, I didn't want to go, I wanted to go Filipino, but like, so we stayed in the context, but okay, I have to go, I have two, right? So I had either really old school Henri Matisse,
Yeah,
creativity takes courage. So that one used to be in my email signature on the bottom, that used to be like my little quote in the end where I would write that off like creativity takes courage. And I would send it an email and then people would reply back, nothing to do with the email, but they were like, I like this quote. It's kind of true. And then we would have these long discussions on email back and forth. So what's your thoughts, Kathy?
yeah. Um, I think it's a truth, no? Even if Henri Matisse is a really old artist, no? Para dun sa ating mga art guru. Of course, I'm sure well-known siya sa atin, no? But for those who are our listeners who are not in the art field, no? He's a painter, a French painter. And creativity takes courage is so true. Kasi 'di ba when you're trying to be creative, it's usually something that's out of the box, something that people have not seen before, and it takes courage to share that kind of out of the boxness. Sometimes that's why people call artists weird, 'di ba? Kasi we are creatives, we are out of the box people. And it takes a bit of courage to be able to show that to a world that sort of likes us to be ano no, parang pare-pareho. Somehow the world has become into a place that values regularity and to a degree mediocrity, which is also like problematic, 'di ba? And I just love your quote, Carmel. Sana nga makaisip nga rin ako ng ilalagay sa aking email.
Well, I was trying to be legit with my emails. I actually like Googled like how to have like a very, like a what is it, memorable signature. So they said come up with a great quote. So of course, Google that, and this came up, and I was like, oh, I love this. And there's actually a book about it. There's lots of articles about this. Like it was endless. Like to prepare for this podcast, I Googled it again just to keep up to date. So just like what you said, Henri Matisse is like a French painter artist. He was like peers with Picasso. Like there's all these movies with Picasso, and they always have a conversation about their competition with each other, but like they were friends. And he was that white guy with the white beard, and he in the end he ended up doing paper cuts and collages. So maybe you guys saw those. um so again, I wanted to go Asian and female, but I ended up going like Western and male. But it's a great quote, and I do love like exactly what you said. As artists, we are vulnerable a lot of the times because we do expose a lot of ourselves in our ideas, in how we present ourselves, present our artwork. And especially in our culture. I don't know about you guys, but my parents, they're not really into the arts. Like they're both CPAs. Like they they know how to make a good living, and I think that was a priority is, how do you support a family? How do you have a good sueldo? How can you support, your lifestyle? Art's just a hobby, or you know what I mean? That was kind of like
Oh,
their
yeah.
understanding of the arts, right? Like how can that be a career, and how can that be your course in college? And like,
Ako
you know,
super can relate.
yeah. So in that sense, that took major courage, like just to choose that as a college course. Um, and I understand, other some people are like, no, no problem. My parents were fine with it. My parents were relatively okay with it, but there was that extra fear, right? Like, oh no, I better not be starving. I better not fulfill that romanticized idea of the starving artist. So I guess that was an extra push, like a reality check to make sure that, okay, what can I do? you know. And as soon as I got my fine arts degree, Google's my best friend. I Googled art jobs in Manila. And
Mm-mm.
that's how I landed my first teaching job, honestly, was being I applied to be a teacher's assistant. So, you know, I feel like creativity in this conversation is almost synonymous with like the creative life, the creative choice that we make as art teachers and art makers and art educators is, like um, just choosing the subject was a little out of the box, and then keep on pursuing it now, especially. So a great example for creativity takes courage is if you guys saw the Unkaboga ball in Cebu with Vice Ganda, did you see the fashion? Like the fashion was unbelievable. They used again the visual language which we know about, to express and to make statements about politics and personal views, which I think takes super courage. And I think, again, we have to forget, like, we don't forget, but we also remember that art is not just paintings in museums by dead white guys. It's alive and living in us, in what we wear and how we present our ideas. So
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
Super agree with that. And it's good that you bring up like drag as a good example of this as well. The very notion of ano, as someone who wears clothing as a means of expression, of using that to make really loud and very expressive statements takes courage. I can imagine also, no, especially if for our viewers who are familiar with what drag is, it's men wearing women's clothes. I can imagine that for me, uh take having the courage to do something that I want to do, which society in general is still getting used to. The idea of men wearing women's clothes in these really fantastic and wonderful and beautiful creations. Ano, it takes a lot of courage. And on top of that, to have Filipino drag queens making statements um, through this art form that they have is really, really ang galing. Nakaka-wow. So,
Super.
yeah, and you mentioned earlier, 'di ba, ano, Carmel, about you were worried that you were giving a quote from a white dude, no? But in truth, no, when these quotes mean a lot, gender, race, background, does not mean much because the essence of what we are talking about in the quote is what matters more, especially when it resonates with us. And no, that's also why we like to share quotes from different people, from different backgrounds, simply because we can find something relational with many different kinds of people. They do not have to be famous people, or they do not have to be super professionals of one field in order to have wisdom in what we do, 'di ba? And I think that is a great way to segue into our next quote. And this is by Vermaline Barrios. She is a coloring coach. Like, 'di ba nauso dati ang coloring books around the 2018, 2017. And
Yep, I'm looking for. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Actually, I got into coloring books din kasi it was a great form of like therapy. And
Yeah.
yeah, 'di ba? And it was a great like opening for hobby art. And nako, ibang episode pa 'yan, yung ano yung talking about hobby art versus fine art versus craft art, no? And but anyway, let me share this quote from Ver. And she is a coloring coach, but she is also a professional in a different, very, very different professional field. So she's a great source of wisdom in this. So her quote is, creativity is a form to express our own emotions and a way to appeal to emotions of others. It's the most powerful means to communicate and express how we feel, to simply connect, or maybe to even inspire. Life without creativity is life uh, without feelings. And perfect, like, ano, no, connection also with the Henri Matisse quote. about creativity, taking courage. And yeah, just wanted to hear your thoughts on this, Carmel.
Totally agree. I love it. It's I was just thinking, because again, visual thinker, in my head, as soon as you were reading this, and I was reading the quote with you alongside. And so I was like, there's like that poster that says like, is it Earth without art is just eh? Like they literally just took out art from Earth. So it's just
Actually,
eh.
oh god.
And I was like, that's
Oh
true, dude.
god.
It's like it's just, yeah, life without, or the world or earth without art, or the idea of art, or the expression of oneself and individual ideas, but also universal. I mean, I feel like that's why art and creativity and like the creative world is so wonderfully complex and contradictory and connecting, but you know what I mean? So we celebrate individualism, but we're all connected and we're all universal in ideas, like exactly what you said about dead white guy quote, but then we can still relate because the concept is universal, and I was just thinking, I watched K-drama and I was like thinking, oh my gosh, like this concept was totally talked about in like, what is it, under the umbrella's mother's umbrella or something. I was like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh, so like my ADHD brain was like connecting all these things. And I was like, yeah, totally. So I feel like that's the creative world. It's so wonderful that again, like it celebrates humanity um in the wonderful contradicting, connecting world that we are. And these quotes are so wonderful. I feel like they celebrate the humanity that 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 the creative and arts worlds really, that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. And I think a really great example of like the earth being without art is like, um, you know how when we try and find things that are meaningful for us, and when we're trying to figure out ano nga ba ginagawa natin, or maybe you're finding that you're perhaps in a rut, or that life is maybe even boring, or perhaps too monotonous, na you're just so into work na paulit-ulit lang. Oftentimes what we search for to find meaning is a form of art, and that would be through music, especially when you're like feeling really heavy. I know a lot of people turn to music in order to help with these feelings. Other people turn to like perfect coloring, or like different hobbies and crafts. Even cooking and baking is a form of art, which again, it makes the world much more livable, no? And we all know just how difficult the world can be. Magko-commute lang ako from here to there, ang hirap-hirap, 'di ba? And how to deal with that. And we have to thank music to help us through our commute, or maybe even just scrolling through your phone and seeing all of the different social media posts. And syempre, no, we can talk about the pros and cons of social media. But all of it also still hinges upon creativity and art, in the same way that people respond on TikToks, 'di ba? It's all creativity. Like
Yeah,
once, 'di
dan
ba? Isang simple na TikTok, magiging ito, magiging ito, magiging 'yon, simply because of human creativity. And it makes life so interesting.
it
And
does.
'di ba? I mean, ako, of course, no, hindi na ako, wala akong TikTok on my phone, pero I still get FB Reels and IG or Instagram Reels. And a lot of these Reels are also from TikTok. And nakikita ko na ang galing naman na this one dance, but yeah, adapt nitong other person, and the next thing you know, this whole wonderful new thing has emerged from one thing, and it's a form of collaborative performance art in a way. And again,
Definitely.
that's another thing to explore, and I would love to be able to invite, no, maybe TikTok artists and content creators to this show to talk about what goes on in their head in creating art in this like short format video. Kasi ang
Yes,
galing.
definitely.
Ang galing.
yeah, how do they edit it so precisely in that, like, it's like seconds long, but like you remember it. It's awesome. And I'm thinking, like, just like 10 years ago or whatever years ago, like companies are paid millions to do that, but like now it's like democratized the power and the influence of you know ideas. It's quite interesting. And I'm just thinking, like, as art, not just art, again, the creative world, like music, art, um dance, drama, design, hobbyists. I don't even like to call it hobbyists, because even though I'm a fine arts grad, I feel like anyways, that's a whole other debate about craft and all that jazz. I'm like all in anyway. But anyone who deals with the creative world, I feel like we are so, how do you say it, it's our time, you know what I mean, like it's our time to, like, I think if you look at history, like human history in the past, when there's like great turmoil or great depression or great pandemics, um, it, human suffering, right? There's like so much suffering, so much negativity, and the artists, the creative soul, is a great way to express a lot of that that happened. And it can go through fantasy or escapism, or just, it can be realistic or realism. But I feel like this is our time to, like, really help, help the world, the earth of heal through this crazy time that we've had. And I feel like we're the medicine, we're like the remedy for this. um
Definitely. Yeah. And it really comes back to this whole conversation from our first episode, no, about how art is really intrinsic to humanity. That's why we always turn back to it, no matter how much the world wants to trivialize art as a subject, as something that is only for quote unquote a selected elite, no? And yet whenever we need something to tune us back into our humanity, like what you said, when we were in the pandemic, when we were having a hard time, it all goes back down to seeking comfort in the arts and reconnecting with what makes us human. So that's something a lot to think about also for everybody here who are listening in on us, because the kind of work that we do, even if sometimes schools tell us that we are a minor subject, no, sometimes schools tell us that you're like less, quote unquote, less important than the other academics. In truth, we play a very crucial and important role in the school ecosystem.
Definitely. Oh, and I'll sneak in my last quote. Let me find it. So, Sir Ken Robinson, he did, like, schools kill creativity. He did all these wonderful TED Talks. He passed away, unfortunately. His
Oh.
daughter is still running the foundation, but you have to pay some money. Anyways,
Mm.
but like, if you go on YouTube, he has a lot of his recordings, and he was actually hired by the Singaporean government to help with their tertiary education. So I have 3 quotes. I'm only going to choose one. Which one? Choose
Well,
for me,
we
Kathy. One,
well,
two,
we
or
can
three.
share all three of them because I think all
Really?
three are quite
Okay.
very very related to so far what we've been talking about.
Okay. And if you, like, need to reread it, it's, Google Sir Ken Robinson, and you'll find, like, I think these are like his top 3 quotes. Like, he was such a wonderful, wise thinker. So, okay, this is the first quote I found. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. Do I read the second one, or do we discuss this one?
Let's talk about this one first.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're not prepared to be
Oh,
wrong, no? Pero ano,
yeah.
it takes a lot of humility to accept that, no? Kumbaga parang may truth bomb si Sir Ken Robinson dito. 'Di ba?
But I did professional development like a few years ago before the pandemic about how we have to, in our schools, in our educational practice, our pedagogical practice, we have to explicitly teach our students to fail. And like how we have to explicitly say, especially this was for all subjects, this was for the whole school, but I think more, again, more so for arts, because that's where we are. But I thought more so we have to say, like, sometimes, especially those students who are like, I don't want to even try, because they're perfectionists. I don't even want to try, or this is wrong, tapos tinapon nila yung buo, kahit they just have to make a little tweak. We know those students, or other people like, I'm just not good at it. So there's like a lot of barriers of these. And then, but again, this is why I love this quote, where we have to say, hey, you know what? It's going to look ugly. It's going to have an ugly phase, and that's okay. And we have to keep on saying, like, that's part of the process. If you stop now, you're not getting the whole experience. You're not getting the whole process of the project or the unit or the expectations or the standard or whatever you call it. But we have to say, like, you know what? You have to be ready to not be the greatest sometimes, and then hopefully you'll get better next time, or understand the process. So again, this idea of results, like, or product standards,
product
that
driven, no?
we have to be, it has to look good at the end. I'm like, does it really? Like, and then sometimes we have discussions like, if you look at the museum, again, sorry for the westernized idea of institutional art, but if you go to, like, okay, if you listen to music on the radio, do people still listen to the radio on Spotify or whatever, streaming? You listen to music. They had how many versions before they released it to the public? Yeah. Just like, again, the arts. If you look at a painting that's in the museum, how many studies did they have? That's why I love how there's books about the master's sketchbooks. You can see the
Yes,
multiple
yes.
studies, and even the paintings underneath the paintings and all the mistakes they did, and even their ugly paintings that they did when they were younger. Like, I think we have to highlight these so that it's not perfectionism. It's not product based. It's not like, oh, masterpiece like that. It's all achievable. I feel like we have to, again, be very explicit and be very clear that sometimes we're not going to make brilliant work, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And it's going to
absolutely
hurt.
agree.
Diba?
That's super agree with that. Because that's actually one of the things that try to teach my students, that it's okay not to get it the first time. And it's really terrible. No, I find it terrible that I need to teach that. Kasi society has taught us all, no, especially the younger generation now, that for some reason, even if you have not never tried it before, if you've never done it before, for some reason, there's an expectation for you to do it right the very first time. And that is not something that we should be teaching, or, di ba? Or like encouraging in our students now, or with our peers, and ourselves as well, no? That's why there's this whole lot of pressure in learning. Kasi parang in-expect na alam mo na agad. And I get that a lot from my students, which is frustrating for them, frustrating also for me, because I also want them to understand exactly what you're talking about, that you have to allow mistakes, because that's the thing, no? A lot of people assume na you see the name of the artist, you see the painting on the wall, that somehow they came up with that miraculously, no? Na hindi sila nahirapan. But
Yes.
in truth, I love that they have to understand that artists came from somewhere. They started from a place where they did not know how to draw, they did not know how to paint, they didn't know how to put trees on their paintings or whatever else that they're working for. And again, no, that highlights something about the education system, about why are we educating in such a way that students are so afraid to make mistakes, and that failure has a bad connotation, when in fact we learn so much from failure, kasi you know exactly what to correct. um
Yes.
when you get it right the first time, it's not perfect. I'm telling you
Yeah.
that immediately. Kasi you don't know what can be
Yeah.
made better. Yeah.
Is it like Chamba, Fluke? And
Oo.
then I was thinking like, okay, I thought two things. ADHD brain. Sorry, so many thoughts, but I have to like break it down. I thought of Angela Duckworth, you know, the writer about grit, perseverance. We have to teach it. Again, these are
Yes.
things that we expect. It's kind of like common sense. We expect things, but we have to teach it as educators. Like, hey, if you're not prepared to be wrong, to make mistakes, to fail, then you're not really learning and you're not going to get better and you're not really extending yourself, you know. If learning was too easy, then you're not learning, right? Like you know how that, like you know how in educational classes it has to be +1 or +2 according to the capabilities or you know
Yeah.
like the temperature of the students. But I was like so sometimes so I substitute teach now, and so sometimes students are funny when they have a substitute teacher because they either are like ah, you know, like oh phew, the regular teacher, the pressure is gone, or like they really miss the teacher, right? But sometimes
Mhm.
like when they're like oh, thank god the teacher's here, not here, I'm like oh why, you know, like you know like how are you like what's it about, and they go it's just that you know like there's just so much pressure and I can't like you know I can't sustain it every meeting, and I'm like oh take a deep breath. And then she's like, so this one specific student, I guess they're just this specific student, in fairness to the teacher, this specific student, I've known them for like 5 years, is quite like an anxious child. We also know these anxious
Mm.
children who like, you know, they just get worried a little more
Yeah.
than typical. I'm one of those. So I was like just helping her on the side going, oh, you know, may I help you? You know, may I help you in what you're expected to do for today? And she was talking about it. And the more she was talking about it, she was just transferring her knowledge. I'm like, you know what? You said it beautifully. I know that you know this content well because you transferred it. You communicated it back to me. And that proves, that's evidence that you know it. And then she's like, I guess it's because I'm just so anxious. My nerves get to me that when my teacher's here, I cannot perform or I cannot express it clearly to that specific person because the anxiety and nervousness goes above because I'm the sub
Right.
and I'm just
Yeah.
there chilling, going, hey, let me, you know, help you. More comfortable allowed her to also, you know, perform better. And I was like thinking in my head, I'm like, that changed my own practice and my own classes going, okay, I gotta tone myself down sometimes because sometimes I'm like, you guys, we have a deadline. Hurry up. You know, like we only have this much time. The art show's happening. This is happening. Come on, come on. I realize I don't. Right. I'm like, wait, I have to take a deep breath, let the students do what they gotta do. You know, and so I was that was a major reality check for me. I was like, oh, you know, I we have to really take a breather and let these students show their learning. And it's not like over accommodating. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a
Right.
difference.
Right. Yeah.
Like right, we can't do that for all students, of course. But it again, as educators, I was like, oh, yeah, taking that pause to let the students really show off their skills, show off their understanding. It can be done in quick post-it notes. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be in one-on-one conversations, but for them to really, um, yeah, express themselves comfortably through the struggle
Mm.
that and grit that they persevered, and then transfer it clearly was, yeah,
That's true.
helpful.
Like that's something that like grit is something that's really essential, not just in learning the arts, but in life in general. Yeah, exactly. And that's something that um I think a lot of subjects are able to teach, but most especially in the arts, because the arts need a process in order for someone to arrive at what they mean to make. And that means trying different ways, experimenting, creating failures in order to get to that one success that you need. And sometimes, this is a pro tip for all of our younger art gurus, no? Sometimes the failures are actually really good successes as well, 'di ba? And sometimes artists would show work that were actually failures in their studio. Pero when they step back away from it, no, they realize, ay, maganda pala. Okay pala siya. 'Di ba? So,
Yeah.
that's something great that you pointed out to us, Carmel, about learning grit and about time. No, I I don't think you could be also faulted about that. Kasi there is a reality that all of us teachers may deadline na kailangan mag-submit ng grade, kailangan ma-meet itong learning competencies na to within the certain amount of time. And that is understandable. So I guess part of the conversation here that is important for us is for our administrations in our schools to know that we need more time. That
Yeah.
'Di ba? Because
I think we should have equal time to all subjects, but that's
yes,
just me.
that's yeah, I agree with that because that's another again another discussion altogether, no?
Another concept.
Another podcast altogether talking about time, no, and getting our schools to listen to us will take an effort, I might say, and possibly even collaboration with other teachers. We can be very creative about this, no? Arts can certainly work with other subjects, like if we integrate with them. And again,
Yes,
that is a wonderful topic altogether, no?
I know. Can you see my brain?
Yeah, ako rin eh, yung brain cells ko parang, uy, subject integration. Ay, marami akong ideas dyan. And we can talk about it, no? Especially with also other art gurus who do subject integration in their classes, who work with science teachers, who work with math teachers, in making sure that we fully utilize the capabilities of art as a subject to help our students. And
Yes.
I think shall we move on to another Sir Ken Robinson quote?
Okay. Let's do a short one. Oh no,
Yeah.
here. Okay. I think they connect.
Yes,
The
yes,
fact that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed. It needs to be transformed. And then the third one, which kind of links to it, is creativity is as important as literacy. So again,
100% on
yeah,
that.
the fact
Yeah,
is that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed. It needs to be transformed. That's change theory in itself, though. And we know of change theory, we know we need the change, but do the people in power know that we need that change?
exactly.
So yeah, sorry, I'm like totally going off. And I was like, just to link on like what we said earlier, I was thinking of practical tips to give teachers in case like we don't have time, we don't have, like
Right,
we don't
yes.
have those administrative decisions that we can't make, but what power we have in the classroom in case we run out of time. Very practical tips that you guys might be like, duh, but I'm like, I always forget, but when I see it, it makes total sense. If I run out of time, but I still need to do the project, make it smaller. If I want to
Yes,
be sustainable and I'm going to do lots of media tests and I'm going to do lots of, and we say these like again we make these decisions and we're explicit in telling the students like, hey you guys, we're making it smaller because we're running out of time, but we still need these same expectations. So you have to still show it, again, being very transparent and like, because we're on the same team with our students, right? That's
yes,
why I feel like it's transformative. We're not against each other. We're together with our students. We want them to succeed. We want them to be well balanced, happy, or mostly happy individuals in the future. Was it? And then if you want to be sustainable with lots of media tests and lots of mistakes, use the media tests and mistakes to make collages. Going back to Henri Matisse, if they're totally ugly, ugly, ugly work, you can always cut them up or paint on top of it or make a collaborative piece. You don't actually have to throw things away. We can actually recycle and reuse and make something maybe more wonderful or maybe something small and cute. So those are that was my total vomiting of ideas from earlier.
but that's a good tangent to be on as well, no? Kasi naisip ko nga rin kanina, how do we make this manageable? Given that we do have real lifetime constraints on our hands because we sadly do not operate in our own perfect artistic studio bubble. And And oftentimes pa dati nung nagtuturo ako sa ibang school, hihingin pa yung subject mo 'pag may exam week. Which is, an extra stress on the art and ano. So, comment kayo sa ano, ARTguro kung na-experience niyo rin yun 'no, that some schools would ask for the art or music subjects time when national tests are coming up 'no, for it.
Oh,
Oo. So,
I thought about it the other way. I thought they might ask for an exam from your subject matter. I was like, oh,
no, no,
it
yung
didn't.
ano, gagamitin nila yung time mo para mag-review. And again 'no, it harks back on,
You know, but I was just thinking, like in the school that I worked at, that was an option, right? Like the students were like allowed to use study time anywhere they like in school. And then the funny thing is, some like a big chunk of the kids, high school, this was high school, by the way, they would go to the art room and they would finish their artwork, by choice, independently. And I thought, beautiful. Like that's kind of what we want in the end, right? For the
yes.
the, the older kids, we want them to independently choose what works best for them. And so I was like, oh, this is so nice. I'm like, don't you want to study for science? They go, no, I studied last night. I want to finish this work and I want to do it to the quality that I'm able.
Yeah. And it harks back on intrinsic motivation 'no.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, one of the essential things that we must be able to inculcate in our students in order for them to be effective learners and possibly in the future, effective, full human beings. And again, another topic of discussion about intrinsic motivation. That's another podcast altogether. Excuse me for that. But I think this is the perfect opening for us to do our last quote for the evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. For me, it's in the evening, kaya ano, no?
For me, it's in the morning.
If you tuned in from our last podcast, you know kung bakit po may time difference. And I would like to close out with a quote from Georgia O'Keeffe. And she is actually one of the artists I really looked up to when I was younger, simply because she was a woman in a sea of men, no, making art that was meaningful for her. And it was unapologetically feminine what she was making. Ano, she didn't try to conform to the world of men by making paintings that were very much of the norm for her time. She made paintings of flowers. She made paintings that were beautiful for her. So her quote is, I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way. Things I had no words for. And for me, it really resonates for me, especially when I don't know how to really put forward what I felt like or my thoughts, my strong feelings about something. And often it is art that is able to do that for us in whatever form of art that you practice. Some people need to dance it out. Some people need to sing it out. Or for those who are, for my friends who are in theater, di ba? They need the movement of their body to be able to flesh out all of these things that they are unable to put words for. And I think it's a really beautiful quote to be sharing with students that sometimes the only way to express something is through something that is more abstract, no, not like through words. And language in itself has many ano no implications as well that we can discuss endlessly.
I love it. I was just thinking, like the idiom, a picture is worth 1,000 words. I feel like agree totally. And I agree with you. Like I think maybe we're around the same age. Georgia O'Keeffe was um you're right, a pioneer in feminist individualism, expression, and confidence. And like what you said, she found inspiration. She lived like in the desert, right? So
Yeah.
like what she found was she found like the skeletal skulls, like desert flowers. And most people would be like, I live in a desert, it's barren, yuck, it's just
Yeah.
sand. But she still found the beauty in the skeletal
Right.
skulls, you know. And I think, again, that's like what we can teach our students, is that sometimes we might think we're in a desert, but inspiration, creativity can be found anywhere. And like what you said, and to express it, I think that's the to for of course there's the desert, it's just there. Anyone can see it, but as us, as the artists, as the creative minds and thinkers and movers, for our to filter through it and then to express something unique and beautiful and wonderful, you know, us in the visual world, using the elements of art, you know, in music, again, like all the expressions that you say, you know, it takes us, the creative minds, to come up with something timeless and universal and beautiful. So,
Yeah,
beautiful quote.
and transcendental, right? That it can move past culture, you know. It can move
Yeah.
past geography and time, because Georgia O'Keeffe comes from a very different time period. Her context is very different from what it is now, from what she is operating in, and the kind of world that we are living in now. And I really find it lovely that you illustrate that where she lived, no, and yet she chose to see the beauty of it. And I think that is the best way to close out this podcast, no, in that the power of art and creativity in helping us see the beauty of life. And again, going back to these quotes by our wonderful artists and art gurus earlier today, about finding inspiration through the arts, about having to have a big heart, and to be being passionate when you teach your students in the arts, as well as having courage. And I think that's one of our most powerful messages from this evening's talk, no, about being courageous enough to let out all of your thoughts and your weirdness and your point of view to the world. And that can be done through your art and your creativity. So I think we shall end there. And this is the perfect segue for me also to talk about Art Thoughts. It is a campaign by ARTguro, where we invite teachers, educators, and artists who do art and who want to like share their thoughts as well, because we want to get our voices into the mix there. If you wish to submit your quote, just leave a comment here in our podcast, whether you're listening in or on Spotify or on YouTube, or if you found the post on our FB page or on our website at artguro.org, leave a comment and we'll be very happy to share your art quote on our Instagram page. Also, just to update you guys, we did talk about scholarships and tips about applying for different educational institutions for higher education. So those would be for art gurus who are looking forward to taking their masters or PhDs abroad, and what scholarship opportunities are out there. That episode is coming up because we wanted to invite art gurus who actually had experience um, having having done and gone through all of these scholarships, para real and practical yung advice nila sa inyo kung paano mag-apply at paano tumaas yung ating chances of getting that scholarship. So just please stay tuned for that. We're hoping to get that episode out by hopefully January or February of 2023. And in the meantime, thank you so much, Carmel, for joining tonight. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening in on us. Please do share uh, our podcasts out there to other fellow art educators in the Philippines, or even just any any fellow teacher that you have that you think might benefit from learning about art and creativity. And hopefully everybody finds their courage today. So have a great day, guys. Thank you so much.